Welcome to this episode of Hidden in Plain Sight, the series where we uncover the Microsoft 365 apps you're already paying for but probably aren't using. From hidden gems to surprisingly powerful tools, we'll show you how to get more out of your Microsoft subscription without paying for a penny more. And next in line, we have Microsoft Loop, which, despite the name, is actually designed to stop you and your team members from going around in circles, by, of course, keeping you all in the loop. With Loop, you can create, share, and update information in real time, all in one place. Whether you're throwing around ideas, tracking a live project, or aligning your team, Loop keeps everybody on the same page. So if this is something you'd be interested in, stick around and let's dive into Loop together to find out why it's the app to keep your team aligned. Today we're going to be looking at Microsoft Loop. And of course, the first step with any new application is to figure out how we can open and access it. Well, there are two different methods with Microsoft Loop. One is through the web, so through a web browser such as Edge or Chrome, and the other is through the desktop experience with an application. The first way we'll show now is through the web, so if you'd like to open your favourite web browser, whether that's Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome, and once opened, if you browse to the website Microsoft365.com. Now you should automatically be signed into this website if you're using a work account, but if you're not, you might see a sign in button. If that's the case, click sign in and then enter your Microsoft credentials. This is essentially your Microsoft Hub, your centralized point for your Microsoft account, where you can see the documents that you've recently been using and working on, as well as the people that you've recently been interacting with as well. But you can also get access to the applications and services that you are licensed for. In the top left, we have this menu icon, and we can instantly see some apps that you're familiar with, such as Outlook, OneDrive, and Word. But we also have a load of other applications, like the one we're looking at today called Loop. And if you don't see Loop immediately available here, just simply click More Apps, which will open up a new tab. And all we need to do is scroll down here to get to the category section, and then under Productivity, we'll find Loop here. And if we click to open that, yet another tab will open up, and here we are. We have now opened Loop. If you prefer to directly browse to that instead of going through that rigmarole, you can always do so by going to loop.cloud.microsoft and it'll bring you straight to this point. Now, if you don't want to use the web-based experience and you'd rather access Loop through the desktop app instead, we can absolutely do that. We just need to open up the Microsoft Store to download Loop. You can do that by going to a new tab and going to apps.microsoft.com, which will bring you to the Microsoft Store in the web, or you can go to your start menu in your search bar on your computer and search for Microsoft Store there, and then just simply open that application up. Once you're in the Microsoft Store, we just need to search for Microsoft Loop. And we'll see that application up in the top left with that same logo. We open up that and we simply click install or download, whichever appears first. We then wait for the application to install and then we'll be able to open the desktop experience instead. Okay, so all we need to do now is click open once it's finished installing, and there we go, we have the desktop app. Now it looks very, very similar to the web-based app, there's barely any difference, but you've just got it in its own window, in its own application rather than in a web browser. So whichever you'd prefer to use, go ahead. We'll go back to the web-based app for now. This is the main Loop interface, and we can see we're greeted by this lovely, kind, warming message that says good afternoon with a little sun emoji. Underneath that we have two tabs, Workspaces and Recent Components and Pages. Within Workspaces we have our very first workspace here called My Workspace, and it's one that Microsoft Loop has actually created for us by default. Notice the personal tag here. This workspace is essentially designed for just us to collaborate with just ourselves. It's our own safe space for note-taking and collaborating. Any subsequent workspaces that we create or we get invited to in the future will also appear in this view too. Recent components and pages. This is where we'll see all the recent content that we've interacted with. So it's all about seeing what we've been working on recently, but also being able to access it really quickly through here too. Back to workspaces though. You might be thinking, Chris, This is great, I know how to access workspaces now, but I don't even know what a workspace is. Well, that's a very good question, so let's explain that now. Loop is nothing without its workspaces. A workspace, or each workspace, should essentially represent a group of people coming together to achieve a unique goal. So that might be a group of people working on a project called Project A. So you'd create a workspace for that project and invite those people into it. You then might have another project, Project B, and it could be the same group of people, it might be a different group of people, it doesn't matter. Project B is a different initiative, that's a new workspace. And you can scale that up and up as you go, it doesn't have to be projects. It could be events that you're arranging, so you might have a Christmas event and a summer event. 2 different workspaces. It could be departmental and function based, so it could be one for HR, one for finance, one for accounts, one for IT. It could be geographical, you could do ones based on counties in the UK, or you could split the country up into north, south, east, west. However your business operates, whatever makes sense for you, create a new workspace for each initiative. One thing I would recommend that is in line with Microsoft's recommendation is that you keep that structure as flat as possible, which again basically means new initiative, new workspace. On the left hand side we have the option to create new. If we click that we can create a new workspace and we'll do that shortly. Furthermore we have a search button, so imagine you've got tons of different workspaces here and you can't quite find some content. Well, search allows you to search across all of those workspaces holistically to find that information that you need access to. Notifications. There's a really good concept in Loop called tagging, and that's where we can tag people. So pretend I was in a workspace here and I needed somebody to kind of fulfill an action. I could say, this still is outstanding, and then I'd tag myself in there, for example, Chris, please can you fulfill this and complete this task. That person who's been tagged, myself in this instance, would then get a notification which I can see in here. Recent is exactly the same as recent components and pages, and then you've got this personal tab and your personal workspaces here, and then if we create subsequent workspaces now, we'll see another section called recent, and in there we'll be able to see all the recent workspaces and be able to click into them very easily. So a very simple navigation bar. Let's create our first workspace now. Create new workspace. And we're actually going to create one for a summer party that we're arranging this year. Summer Party 2025. Again, it's a new initiative. It's a group of people coming together. We have a very big organisation, let's just pretend, and there's tons of people who need to get involved to arrange things like catering and accommodation. So lots of people coming together for one unique goal. We've got an option to add an emoji here, and you'll find this throughout Loop is that Loop is supposed to be fresh, funky and new. It's not your bland OneNote of a world, it's designed to be fun to use and a bit gamified if you like. So we're going to add a fun emoji here. Let's use a picture of a sun, it fits in with the summer party theme. Sensitivity label, we're not going to get caught up on this. Your business might have sensitivity labels configured. If they do and you know how to use them, feel free to go ahead. If you don't, let's leave that for now, because sensitivity labels are actually part of a data security capability that is offered in Microsoft 365, and that probably warrants a whole series of videos in itself. So let's just move on from that for now. We said that workspaces are all about collaboration, so this is where we can start inviting people to collaborate. So anybody who needs access to this workspace, let's start typing their emails and names in here and inviting them. Once we've got that list of invitations, we've got a name and an emoji, let's hit create to create our very first workspace. And there we have it, very quick. Right, so we've created our first workspace here called Summer Party 2025, and we're now inside that workspace ready to collaborate and create content. On the left hand side, we've got that same navigation bar again that hasn't changed much. The only thing that has changed is we have this recent section now and this workspace that we've just created in. So you can imagine when you have multiple workspaces and you're working within all of them, then they'll all appear here and you can just click them to navigate through, so it's nice and easy. This next bit though, this big white canvas and the kind of navigation bar in between those, looks very much like OneNote. If you've ever used Microsoft OneNote for note taking, you'd be kind of familiar with the layout and concept here. But essentially what we have is this thing called untitled, and that thing is what we call a page. And we can have multiple pages, and the idea is to have quite a few of them, I guess. We can create new pages by hitting this option here, but we can also hit the plus icon here and create more. But we've got our first page here either way, and Microsoft Loop will always create this first untitled page to get you started when you create a new workspace. Now, when we talked about workspaces at the start, I said Loop is nothing without its workspace. Well, a workspace is nothing without its pages. Pages are where we add all the content and we collaborate with other people. There is literally no point to a workspace without pages. It'd just be an empty container. So you can think of the workspace as the container, the group of people, the segregation, and then the pages being where the content resides and where people collaborate. Okay, so on the right hand side, we've selected this untitled page, and we can now start to give it a title and things and start adding content in this big empty white space. But before we do that, I just want to show you a few templates. And this is one thing I like about Microsoft apps. When you're first getting started, there's usually a list of templates that you can use for inspiration or to get ideas. So we'll go down to the bottom and we'll click Use a Loop Template. And we can see 24 predefined templates here for various different business cases. We have this first one for Project Brief. So let's scroll down and take a look at what it looks like. And this is our first look at what a page, a loop, really is all about. And we can see here it's kind of fun, it's gamified, it's interactive. We've got tables, we've got numbered lists, another tables, and we've got links. If we went into meeting notes, let's see what's different. Well, we've got a note field, a date field, there. We've got more tables, we've got a checklist. If I go into Kanban board, this is probably more around project management and things like that. Yep, we've got the Kanban board there. So there's loads of different templates to get you started and get some inspiration. So feel free to look through these, see if any fit. And if one does, you just need to click it and hit Use Template here. And then you can modify that template. So you're not stuck with it, you can tweak it for your needs. But for the sake of this, we're going to create a new untitled page completely from scratch ourselves. So the first thing that we need to do for this page is add a title. So we're going to click this untitled bit here and call it Meetings. So what we're doing here is creating a page to start documenting our meetings that we have around the summer party. So meeting notes, agendas, that sort of thing. There's going to be tons of them. There's lots of different people involved. We're a huge enterprise, let's just pretend. And we have people who need to be involved in catering, in accommodation activities, all that good stuff. So we've got our title now, and we can see that title that we've put on this page has also updated the page name here. We've got this option to add an icon, and again it's that fun gamified approach using emojis. So what rings true for meetings? Well, probably a calendar. So let's add a nice emoji. Let's keep in the kind of line and perspective of what Loop wants us to do. We have this option as well to add a cover, and that's basically a banner image at the top, and it's all about Microsoft stock images. So we've got some abstract content, we have some landscapes and some gradients. Nothing too game changing. This one looks fairly summery to me. There's an ocean, the weather looks good. Let's choose that. So we've got our cover image, we've got an emoji, and we've got meetings. And again, you can see that emoji has actually appeared at the beginning of the page in this list here. And you might think, God, these emojis are a bit cringy and things, but generally they really do help kind of digest and break down content. And you can imagine if you had dozens of pages in here without the emojis, it would just be a wall of text, whereas the emojis help people identify the pages. So they do have a genuine use as well. Now, as I said, we're going to have tons of meetings, dozens of them. So we don't want to list all the notes for every meeting on this one page because it would just get really difficult to navigate. We'll be scrolling forever. So we're actually going to use this as a bit of a parent page, a holding page. So what we need to do anyway to add some content here is just click into this box. And we can just start typing, right? I can start typing the alphabet if I wanted here. And that's just going to be called paragraph text, simple, plain body text. And anybody can just type in there what they want. But that's not what Loop's about. Well, it kind of is, you can add text of course, but there's plenty of other widgets that we can use in components. So if we hit this plus button here, we're going to see all of those options. So we can add tables, checklists, bullet lists. We can put maths equations in, table of contents, dividers. We can change the style of the text that we're writing with. We can have that standard body text that I just showed you. Or we can have different headings, so main priority heading 1, or lesser headings like heading 2 and heading 3. And quotes. We've also got some templates here as well for like voting tables and like that Kanban board that you saw before, and even question and answer sessions, and of course emojis. So that's one way you can hit the plus icon. Another fun way of doing it is by hitting / on your keyboard, and that'll bring up the exact same option, so whichever you'd prefer. Once you get very savvy though, and you understand all these options and you know what you want, you can actually just type the / and then type what you want after that. So if I said, well, I just want a heading, I'm going to type heading 1, and then that would appear. Likewise, if I just wanted a date, I could hit / and then type date. So 3 different options. We can hit the plus icon, we can just do the / on its own, and then find which element we want to add, or we can actually start searching for them as well to break it down. Whichever you want to do. As we said, this is just a holding page though. We don't want to add much content here, so we're just going to put one line of simple text where it says that this section is dedicated to documenting and minuting meetings. Okay, so this is our primary meetings page. We now want to be able to document and have a separate page for every individual meeting. And this is where that whole OneNote stuff seems quite familiar. So of course, we said about creating a new page. We can absolutely do that by hitting plus, a new page, or just hovering over the page that's last in the list and hitting create new page. But we want it to be involved and related to this top level section. So if we hit the 3 dots on the page that we have, and click new subpage. And what you'll see that happens here is not only do we get that new untitled blank page to go again and create a new page, but it indents itself under meetings. So it's related to that top level section now, because it's not a main kind of parent page like meetings is, it's actually a subpage, and you can collapse and expand that as you need. And we can give this meeting a title now, so it could be date based, so you could put the date of the meeting in that title, or the subject. In our example, we're going to keep with the subject, so we're going to call it the catering meeting. So it's about all the different food choices for this summer party. Sticking with the same fashion, let's add an emoji. I'll skip through this very quickly because we've seen it once. Let's choose a different banner, and there we go. We've got our new subpage for the catering meeting. Let's add our first kind of loop element now. So let's move away from just standard text. So we're going to click in here and we'll hit the plus icon in the first instance. I think the first thing that people need to see when they have a look at this meeting is when it occurred or when it's scheduled for. So let's click date. Now we get the option to choose a date from a calendar. So we'll say that this meeting occurred on the 28th, 2 days ago. And as easy as that, we now have a date widget. So we can see Monday, April 28th, but you can also see how long ago that was, so 2 days ago. Lovely, right? Very easy to use. Next line. Before we add more content and make this a massive wall of text and tables and what have you, let's think about perhaps dividing the page up so it's easier to navigate. So I'm going to use the / this time just to show you that other method, and I'll scroll down and find the option that says divider, and then that'll give us a nice line through to break off that section and start a new one. Let's add our next bit of content now, which is going to be an attendees list. We need to see who was invited and who accepted the meeting. So let's start off by using the / this time rather than the plus icon, and we're going to scroll down and we're going to start it off with emoji to keep it nice and fun again. Let's choose an attendee, something that represents people. There's a person here, that's great. Then we'll put space and then /. We now want to add a subheading. So rather than scroll down this list, I'm just going to type heading 2, and we can see that here, which I'll click, and then we can type the heading. So let's think of this, attendees make sense, because that's what the section's about. Enter new line. This time let's have a checkbox, so /, we'll bring this menu up once more. You'll get the gist very quickly with this, and let's click checklist. Now let's add the list of attendees. So let's start off with myself, but let's also put some other names in there. Sunny McGrill, we have Sandy Shores, and we have Pineapple Pete. All very summery names apart from mine. So The beauty of a checkbox is that, of course, we can check them. So we could say, well, Sonny attended, Sandy attended, and Pineapple Pete attended. But Chris didn't. He was too lazy and missed the meeting. His bad, really, there. So let's leave him unchecked. Now, any text that you have in a loop, you can change the formatting of very simply. All you need to do is click and highlight and drag across the text that you want to change, and you have a few different options that appear, such as bold, italics, underline, strike through. You can change the heading type, and you can also go to the three dots here and change more settings, such as the colour. So we can change the colour of the text and put a background of the text and make it look a bit prettier, make it stand out. We can also indent and decrease the indent of the content. So if I increase the indent here, we'll see it'll move over slightly from the left over to the right, and there we go, and so forth. So no groundbreaking formatting options, but probably the stuff that we need the most is already there for us. Okay, so we have an attendees list now. Let's go to our next section that we need to add content for. Let's go and add another emoji. It's our next section. Let's keep on trend. We're going to call this scope, and we're going to add another heading now called exactly that, scope of the meeting. So this isn't the agenda, it's more what is the scope of the meeting, what's a quick line of text that we can add to give people an idea of what the meeting is for. So far we've been hitting this plus icon or the slash icon to add content, but if you remember, if we want to add normal body text, normal paragraph text, we don't need to do that. All we need to do is just start typing. So I'm going to paste some predefined text in here that gives the reader a scope of what the meeting is about. I'm going to whiz through this next section because you kind of get the idea now, and it might get a little bit repetitive. So I'm going to add a new emoji for a new heading that is going to be voting. So let's try and find something that represents a vote. Maybe it's this bar graph. And we're going to put a new heading called voting. Lovely, so we've got our next emoji and our next section lined up. Now we want to be able to give people something to do in this meeting. We want them to be able to vote for their favourite kind of catering option, their food choice, their cuisine that they'd like to see at the summer conference. And we can do that by adding what we call a voting table. So again, hitting that plus icon, let's have a look at the options available to us. And we have this voting table template already here. So we might as well use that. So we'll click that to add it. And it does give us a table heading already, which we can just delete because we've already got our own heading there. And we can see here we've got some predefined columns. So the idea, the pros and cons. So the idea could be something like pizza, it could be barbecue. And if we wanted to add a new row, we'd hit new, and we could add something else like pasta. We could then put the pros and cons. So it could be things like expensive, or not very good, or not very inclusive for dietary and allergens and things like that. And then you have the voting concept where people can just simply click in here and put a +1 and vote for what they'd prefer to have at that summer party. So this is one of the first kind of cool elements that we're seeing. You know, text is text, headings are headings, checklist, yeah, whatever. But these voting tables and things is where it gets a bit more exciting. I want to show you now how to create a new table from scratch. So we're going to go down here and add a table. And that is essentially what the voting table is here, but it's a bit more customized. So very familiar stuff that you'd be used to. We have columns and rows, of course. It's a table. We can rename these columns as well. So I could call this task. I could call this owner. So maybe let's create a table for a task list. So any actions that come out of the meeting, we need to be able to create actions and assign owners. We'll hit the plus icon here to add a new column. So we'll put progress in there, and then maybe deadlines, probably a good one that we need to understand. Okay, so this is a plain text table now. We can enter the tasks such as call the pizza truck and find out costs. That's one action that's come out of the meeting. So we can be updating this page as we go through the meeting. We then need to assign an owner, and we're going to say, okay, that's for Chris. And what's for progress? Well, it's not started, and so forth. But can you see how we're manually typing all this in? It's not very interactive. It's not very easy to use. The task on the left-hand side probably needs to be manually entered during the meeting because we don't really have any predefined options for what that could be. But we can make the owner, progress and deadline columns better by hitting the drop down arrow next to each one when we hover over the column headings. If we hit the change column type option for owner, we've got a list of different options, and at the moment it's set to that plain text, but we could have numbers and dates and people and that voting option that we saw before. So we're going to choose a person here because it's about assigning this task to somebody. So instead now when we click this box, instead of typing in somebody's name, we'll have a list of options, such as my colleague Chris. And I could select him in there and it would assign it to him, and then he'd get a notification up in his notifications area. You can see it's got a red ellipses around this name at the moment, and that's simply because Chris doesn't have access to this workspace. If you remember, I didn't invite anyone in my example, but if I had, that would work just fine. Progress, let's do the same for that, change column type, and then now we want to go to labeling and see what options we have. Well, we have a progress label group, which includes not started, in progress and complete. We have a priority, low, medium, high, and so forth. Progress fits our needs, right? It's going to give us a few different options such as not started and in progress and complete. But if nothing here really screamed out to us, we can create a new label group, so a new set of options, but we'll choose progress. This time we click into progress, then we can choose from these options and it looks a lot nicer and prettier, easier to use than just plain text. Finally, deadline, let's do the same very quickly and choose date, and this time we'll get a calendar. So yes, you do have the templates like this voting one that are predefined and already configured for you, but if you don't quite meet your needs, you need to make some changes, then you can absolutely do that by using that method I've just shown you for this table. Cool. So we've added some content now to our first loop page, and as you experiment with that more, you'll find more and more components and widgets that make sense for you. We know how to add more pages as well. We can carry on doing that until our heart's content. We can add subpages and create new untitled parent pages and then brand them all up nicely. And yes, Loop is a great tool for note taking and collaborating, as we've just seen. But this now, what I'm about to show you, is where Loop becomes super powerful, and no matter how many times I use this, it amazes me every single time. So we can actually start sharing this out, and I don't mean just by inviting people to collaborate with it so we can use it just as we are in here. We can actually create and bring out sections of this loop now, this page, whether it's for a page in its entirety or different subsections inside the page, such as just this voting table. Whatever it might be, we can kind of pull that out now and splat it into an email or into a Teams message or anything else that supports a loop component. And what that basically does is create a dynamic link to this central place here. So wherever we send it in an email or in a Teams message, people can interact with it and it'll update all in this one place. So let's show you how to do that now, because it's super exciting. So if you ever want to share a page out in its entirety, so imagine Chris, in this example, has not attended the meeting. Let's send him the agenda, right? Let's go to this page. We can hit the three dots and we can click Share Loop Component. The other way of doing it is going to this button up here on the page and clicking Copy as Loop Component, either or. So let's click that now. And it's going to spiral around. It's going to create a link for us. So link copied, people in Mondo Cloud with the link can edit. So you might be thinking, well, okay, I've just got a link now. You're just going to send a link to someone and they're going to click it and they're going to be brought to this page. That's absolutely not what is going to happen. It's much more exciting. So that link is in our clipboard now. So let's draft a new email to myself. I know, very lonely emailing myself. So, to Chris Hudson, meeting update. You're unable to attend today's meeting. Please find the notes below. Feel free to update as you please. So we're going to paste that link in that we've just copied by copying that loop component. And we can see here it's actually drafting that component into this email. And look at that, it looks exactly the same as the page that we created in Loop, and it is. It's a mirror image. But it's not a screenshot. It can be updated dynamically by anybody who receives it. So let's just send this now to Chris, for example, and let's just wait a few minutes for that to arrive in his mailbox. There we go. So this is the email that's arrived as the recipient now. So we haven't clicked reply to edit the email or forward it or anything like that. This is just me simply reading the email. Look, I can't do anything with this text. I can't type in here. but I can see this loop component that was shared. So I can not only see this and now get an idea of what that meeting was about, but I could make a choice here. I could vote. So at the moment, if we go back, if I put them side by side, that might be a good way of seeing it really, and go down to maybe the voting section. So let's scroll across on this view, and we can see that we've got no votes here. But in my email on the left, because I missed the meeting, I couldn't vote. So I'm going to vote from my email. I'm going to put a vote for that, and a vote for that, and a vote for that. And we can see in real time, look how quickly that was updated on the right hand side. And likewise, if I said, well, actually, you've missed an option here, there's another option for the catering, I guess. We could put something like loaded fries in there. And as soon as I add that option, it's going to appear here. There we go, loaded fries. It's literally instant in terms of how quickly it updates. So that is one way of interacting with Loop. It's not just about accessing it in this web application. It's actually about being able to drag components out of it and distribute it anywhere and keep that one source of truth. Can you see here that we can see this initials and name, Chris Hudson, and this red box? Well, that tells us where somebody else is on that page once we've shared it out with somebody. So as I click through my email, I'll click on barbecue pasta, you can see where I'm working with it. So if somebody else, a group of people were in here, you'd be able to see where they all were in the document and what they're editing at that moment. In a page, you can also see these icons at the top again. So Chris Hudson has this page open, and you can also see my image here. If we had multiple pages, you'd see other people in there as well, and you can hover over them to see who they are. So it's all about that real-time collaboration. So that's how you share an entire page. So we've just then shared that entire page that we created earlier via a email, and it's all dynamically updating and interactive. What about if we just wanted to share this table? We just want to say, look, Chris, you don't need to see the whole page. Just vote for your favorite cuisine that you want to see at the summer conference. So this is where we can kind of click the table now. So we're going to select the table, this section, by hitting these menu dots. And we're going to have the option to create a new loop component. So rather than creating the whole page as a loop component, we're going to create just this section as one. So let's hit create loop component. And can you see now it's got this lovely kind of bluey purple line that goes around it, which highlights it from the rest of them. It basically means that it's just a loop component ready to be shared out. So what we need to do now to share this is go to these options that have just appeared on it. So first of all, we can see who has access just to this. Well, people who have access to this workspace already do. We can copy the component, and we can also see shared locations. So shared locations allows us to see where this component has been shared. If we went back to shared locations up at the top at the page level, we can see now that it was shared in that email that we sent. So you can keep track of this as well. It's not just, oh, let's send it out everywhere and forget. You can see that. So let's go back to this one component that we've created here. And this time we're going to hit copy component. Now we've created it as a loop component. And we're going to wait for that line. We're going to get that link again. This time we're going to send it through Teams. So I'm going to send a message to myself in Teams, yet again being lonely. So let's paste that link in this time again. And then in a few minutes, we'll get that loop component, and then we'll hit send. And then myself as the recipient, but remember it could be anyone that you're collaborating with, can then go into this voting table and then vote for what they're like in here. And same again, it will dynamically update in here super quickly as it has just done. So you can share the whole page or just a component of the page, and it's all dynamic, all in one place, and it keeps everybody, of course, in the loop, if you pardon the pun. Okay, so a few more options then. Let's look at this page. So if you've decided that you really love this structure that you've created for capturing meeting notes, then you can absolutely hover over the page, hit the three dots, and then you can click Save Page as Template, and then you can replicate that template and create it again. You can also duplicate pages as well. In the top right, we have the Share button. So again, do we want to invite people to the entire workspace? So a bit of a different way of accessing it through this button here. You can also access it through the Share button, either or. You can do a page link, so that means get a link to this page, and it's your standard solid kind of stale hyperlink where people click and it'll bring them to the page. But then you've also got that loop component, which we've just been experimenting with, where it takes that link and turns it into something really special. The three dots here, you've got some more options for the page. So if that page is now finished with, you don't want anyone else to modify it, you can lock the page, and that basically locks it down. So I can't check myself as an attendant now, I can't get away with not attending. And if I unlock it, I can rename the style and stuff of the page. I can print it, see some version history. So if we've got multiple people on here and they've accidentally deleted something, we can restore from an earlier version as well. Cool. I think that is Loop in a nutshell then. The main things that you need to remember with Loop is your workspace, your pages for your content, and then that magical Loop component that we've just shown you, where you can share that out through email and Teams and various other places as well, so everyone can come together and achieve one goal. Thanks for watching. If this application has sparked your interest, or you're curious about any other area of the Microsoft Cloud Platform, or anything else IT related at all, even IT support, we're here to help. Feel free to reach out to us however you'd prefer, and let's explore how we can work together. We're ready when you are.